everybody, and welcome to run number 17 of the NJ Fire Guys podcast. Tonight, we have a very prestigious guest, Dr. Fire Chief Denis Onieal of the Jersey City Fire Department. Chief Denis Onieal entered into the Army in 1967 and was honorably discharged in 1969. Chief Onieal went on to join the Jersey City Fire Department in 1971 and rose through the ranks to deputy chief. He retired in 1995 as acting chief of department, leading the department's force of 650 members. In 1976, Chief Onieal completed his bachelor's degree in fire science at the New Jersey City University. Followed in 1978 by a master's degree in public administration from Fairleigh Dickinson University. He graduated in 1990 with his doctorate in education from NYU, where he went on to teach in the master's and doctoral programs for over 5 years. After retiring from the Jersey City Fire Department, Chief Onieal was appointed as superintendent of the United States National Fire Academy, where during his tenure, he brought enrollments from 15,000 to well over 100,000 per year, and was instrumental in incorporating the curriculums with the American Council of Education and nationwide standards for fire degree programs. He was then appointed to deputy U.S. Fire Administrator and was responsible for all aspects of the day-to-day operations of the United States Fire Administration and the National Fire Academy. He is the recipient of very many prestigious awards, including the Department of Homeland Security's Secretary's Medal for Exceptional Service, the Congressional Fire Service Institute's Mason Langford Leadership Award. He is also a Lifetime Achievement Award recipient from Fire Engineering and Firehouse Magazine Lifetime Achievement Award winner, and many, many more prestigious awards. He is a life member of the VFW and the International Association of Fire Chiefs. He serves on the boards of the International Fire Service Training Association, the National Fire Protection Association, and WellSpan Health System. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Chief Dr. Denis Onieal.
Nick, I'm surprised at how well you read my mother's handwriting. Thank you. That's way too long.
I was cutting it down on the fly just the key points.
There we go.
So, how are you tonight? How's
Good.
everything going?
I'm well.
Good. All right, so let's get started. Where did it all start for you? Where'd you grow up?
Jersey City kid.
Okay.
Came home from the Army, and my dad was on the fire department, and he had the application. They had they had announced the test, and as you know, it's a statewide exam. And he said, fill this out and send it in. Of course, I didn't fill it out, and he was did you fill it out? Okay, so finally he filled it out, and I signed it and sent it in. With, as you well know, in veterans status in New Jersey, as long as you pass the test, you're moved up only on the entrance, not on promotion. So I got on the job, and I was fortunate that I went to a firehouse where there were a bunch of other veterans, and they were all going to school. Those, as the war going on, but they were all going to school on the GI Bill. And as your mom always told you, hang out with the smart kids. And I was fortunate that I was able to do that. And we were swapping shifts with each other so that we could attend college. And that was really what launched me. But I was just in the busiest ladder company in the city at that time, 5-truck. And so you got both sides of it. You got the academic piece and you got the workhorse piece.
Good combination. I wish I was smart enough to do it back then. So, what were the early days in Jersey City like for you?
Well, there was, when I reflect back on it, I never realized a lot of things about the fire service. Like some folks, they kind of stay in their own department, and I encourage people to get outside of their department. But I stayed inside the department, and everything smart was Jersey City. Everything good was Jersey City. Everything tough was Jersey City. But we would go. I remember I went in the fire station after Poby School in December, and we had a multiple alarm fire every tour. Now a tour is 2 days and 2 nights at that time. We had at least one multiple alarm fire every week until August. And there were many times when we would have several multiple alarm fires. And this was what they commonly refer to the war years. And so, I mean, that's all I knew. That's what every fire department was like. So even growing up, if you would we kidded around, you went to Catholic school, and the nuns would tell you, you could, if any one of you could be president of the United States. But if you really worked and you applied yourself, you could get a good job, like a cop, a firefighter, or a teacher. And if you didn't go to college, the police department, the fire department were 2 good jobs.
Yeah.
And if you went to college, you became a teacher. And it's surprising how many of the kids that I grew up with went that route.
Yeah.
So yeah.
So now is that the good job aspect? Is that why your dad pushed you, or is that?
Yeah, it was a good job aspect. And I don't want to over dramatize this, but when you left the Army, okay, it was a combat tour. You handed them your rifle, and 3 days later, you were in your kitchen at home, discharged from the service. I mean, there was no adjustment period, and it was very difficult to adjust, and I was not adjusting well. I'll just leave it that. If you could do things wrong and bad, I was doing things wrong and bad. I was working, but I was just partying and happy I was home, and so this was the stability. And then again, that I got in the right firehouse with the right firefighters who, that became my little society. That was our way of life. That's what we did.
Now, looking back, you said there was a handful of other veterans.
Mm-hmm.
But do you feel like maybe that now we know it as PTSD?
Yeah.
Do you feel like you guys kind of worked on things like that together without knowing it, or?
It's very hard to say, Nick. And I don't like to play psychologist or psychiatrist on this thing. They were good people, and many of them went on to greater things. Harry Carter from New Jersey. I mean,
Absolutely.
Harry and I went all the way through college together. He was in Newark, I was in Jersey City, and it's a mile apart across the river.
Yeah.
Another man named John Lynch, who left Jersey City, went with the United States Fire Administration, and really started arson programs. Before this, there was no interest in arson, and he started this whole thing with the Arson Task Force and went all over the country teaching cities how to deal with the problem. Another guy, we were all in the same firehouse, another guy named Bobby McCarthy. And if you have good PPE, and despite all the things you're reading about today, the fact that we have good personal protective equipment today is because of Bobby McCarthy. He went off on a disability from the fire department in Jersey City, went to the fire administration and did tremendous amounts of research on PPE, and to the extent that we have safe equipment today, it's to Bobby. So, another guy, Billy Sinnott, later became the chief of department in Jersey City. So these were all people that did well, So as I said, maybe Mom is right about hanging out with the smart kids,
Yeah, definitely hung out with a good crowd.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, that's did great things, not only for themselves, but for the future of the fire service and for everybody, really.
Yeah.
So what were those early days?
Well,
I mean, I have some old pictures that I pulled up for Chief Turpak.
Okay. That's Jersey City, all right.
And for Chief Cobb. That's I mean, looks like a rough neighborhood.
Well, I would liken it to this, Nick. You know, if there's two fish swimming in the ocean, one fish doesn't say to the other fish, "Do you feel wet?" You know, you're in the middle of it. You don't know any
Yeah.
better. You know, and it's not until you get out and you look around and you say, "Wow, you know, I didn't realize what we were going through." And you know, you knew all these guys from New York City. They're right. You know, if you look at that picture, Jersey City is 3,000 feet away from Manhattan.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I knew Vinnie Dunn, I knew John Salko, I knew John Norman, not now Sal Casano, not because, you know, we were all firefighters and maybe lieutenants on our way up. You know, I don't know how else to describe that, but so you were in this environment of really sharp people. And I wrote a few names down, and you and I were lucky to be from New Jersey. Billy Peters and I went up through the job together. Billy Peters wrote the classical work on fire apparatus purchasing. It's still the classic work. Mike Turpak, you mentioned. John Olson is the chief up in New Haven, Connecticut. Tony Avilo has written several books on strategy and tactics, the same as Mike Turpak. As I said, Harry Carter and I went through college together. Frank Viscuso is the next town over, and Carney's written tremendous books. He speaks all over the world on leadership. Just a great guy. Glenn Corbett does a lot of editing. I'm sorry, not editing. He is the editor of Frank Brannigan's book on building construction. And so I don't know if they sprinkled pixie dust on us or whatever, but it was just seemed to be a golden age, in my view, for the fire service.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You know what? It must be in the water, just like, what was it? Thomas's English muffins. They couldn't get the nooks and crannies after they left Hoboken.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. So when you know you get into the firehouse, what was your like your pro beat training like back then, or was it mostly on the job kind of?
No, we went away. We went to Proby school for about 8 weeks, and it was good. We had a man at the time. His name was Nick Fargo, who was the deputy chief in charge of training, and he was an educated man. He had a bachelor's degree, which was rare in the fire service in those days, and he was a World War II veteran. All of them were World War II veterans, and they took their time. They made sure you had it, you know, that you got the right blend of academics and the understanding of what was going on, but the reality of what you were going to be facing when you hit the streets. And, you know, the warnings about, you know, when you get to the firehouse, they're going to tell you to forget everything that you learned in the academy. Well, they said, look, we're trying to teach you the right way. And it was good. And again, my class was, I'm going to say, probably 50 to 60% all returning veterans. Wow. So, you know, we knew how to take orders. We knew how to pay attention. We knew how to respect rank. And so, you know, I mean, it was a good time. And most of the class, you know, reflecting back on it, most of the class became officers. Quite a few made chief officers out of that class.
All right. So now, what drove you to start studying for lieutenant? Well, you guys had lieutenant back then, right?
We had lieutenant back then. I came to the realization, there's a couple of things I realized. One was when I was going to school, I realized that I knew how to take tests. And that was the key element in New Jersey, as you know. Yeah. It's a written test, multiple choice, 100 questions. And if you get 99 and the next firefighter gets 98, you're going to get promoted ahead of him or her. So the aspect of doing that, and there was a couple of other things I realized. Another thing I realized was I was going to do 42 hours a week in the fire station, and I was going to make a certain amount of money for those 42 hours. Now, if I was a lieutenant or a captain or a battalion chief,
that certain amount would be a little bit more.
in 42 hours. And then what I would like to say, and in Hudson County or in the fire department in Jersey City, there were only two things that survived you. The first was your pension, because there were survivor benefits on your pension.
Yeah.
And the second thing is, after you died, you could still vote. But it is Jersey City.
Yeah.
All kidding aside, but no,
I think that
okay,
works for
so
Essex County as well.
yeah. And so, I latched on, and I just used the time in the fire station to go to school, to study for school, and to study for promotion. And Harry Carter and I studied together, and there was another guy in New York City, Jimmy Klein, who later we went into business together. So, and that was it. It was just, and then of course there were, I want to put this the right way, a few officers who I observed and I thought I could do a better job than they could. But it was not that kind of a motivation. It's just like,
Yeah.
somebody can do a better job than that.
Yeah. We've all had that officer.
Well, I mean, if you look at it, I mean, they're good people, they're hardworking people, but somebody didn't pull them aside and teach them how to do it right, or they didn't do a lot of studying to help them learn the things that they needed to learn.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they just weren't interested in the job.
Yeah. So, what year you get on in 71? You said.
Yeah.
What year did you promote to lieutenant?
Lieutenant in 76, captain in 84, because there were no tests. That's a long story, but battalion in 86, deputy in 90.
Okay.
And chief in 94.
Now, when did Jersey City do away with the rank of lieutenant? Because I know now it's just firefighter captain.
84.
84?
They had poorly designed the rank. We were the first group of lieutenants promoted. At the time, they had 160 captains, and they wanted to attrite down to 29 captains.
Okay.
So, we were just landlocked. We were not going to get any promotions. And they kept violating civil service rules and regulations. And every time we did, we filed a complaint with civil service, and the city would change the rules. But every time they changed the rules, they made it more difficult for themselves to manage the process. So it got to the point where their hands were tied. They couldn't deal with it anymore.
Yeah.
And so they just said, no, this was an experiment that failed, and they promoted all of us to captain.
So now, was it similar to, because you guys were still on the 4, the 2 days, 2 nights.
Yep.
Was it similar? Was it set up the same as like FDNY, where each company had a captain and 3 lieutenants?
Well, that's what
they were doing with it.
They had so many captains, they couldn't do that.
Okay.
So the problem was that they only had room for 29 captains, but they still had 160 captains on the books.
Okay.
So the city could never discriminate between what a captain who was not a station captain did and a lieutenant did. They were doing the same job.
Chief Cobb just commented in, it's a firehouse, not a station.
Thank you, Chief Cobb.
He's got the little laughing emoji as well.
So for the record,
he said who replaced him on truck 5 when he got promoted?
He was my replacement when I got promoted. Yeah. And so I'm going to have to deal with a harassing crowd on this broadcast. I don't know, Nick, do I have any broadcast rights here or something?
You do. You have freedoms.
What a terrific fire officer Bobby Cobb is. And another stellar performer who went on to bigger and better things. And I need you to ask me the question a little later on about Chief Cobb's experiences with ISO and how he changed the American Fire Service for the better.
Oh, he left. We talked about ISO when I had him on the show. He did not talk about how he changed the fire service.
Okay.
We will definitely have to get into that.
Well, you do what you got to do, and then ask me that question later
All right.
on.
Well, my plan is to get through your experience with
Okay.
the FDJC
Yep.
and move on to what you did down in Emmitsburg
Okay.
for the administration, and then I
Sure.
guess we'll roll into Chief Cobb. I
Okay.
mean,
Good.
because really both of you were instrumental. I mean, others as well, but you from the fire administration standpoint and Chief Cobb with ISO apparently in
Mm.
changing the fire service and changing the face of the fire service. So you get made, they do away with lieutenants, make you a captain, and
And now they have a test for battalion chief in about a year,
okay,
and so I did well on that again, and promoted in the first group of battalion chiefs. And then when I was downtown, I had the first battalion, and it was a great experience because we had the hazmat unit, we had all of the subway systems, we had the Holland Tunnel, we had waterfront, we had high rise. So if it was just a great place to have, and we had tenements. It was almost like it was the beginning of the tale of two cities.
okay,
The very expensive parts of Jersey City, a marina that I used to have nightmares about on the Hudson River, and all of the piers, all of the floating docks were made of fiberglass. The boats out there, I couldn't afford a half a boat on my salary, and these boats were just one bigger and better and more
yeah.
expensive than the other. And then on the weekends, on the summertime, you had a combination of people drinking,
I was gonna say alcohol.
gasoline all over the place, and fiberglass floating docks. So what you needed was one person to set a fire on one of those docks, and it had to be, I don't even know, 10 or 15 floating docks out into the Hudson River with all these boats. And all I could see was one fire, and Onieal would have had a multi-billion-dollar fire
Yeah,
that wouldn't have lasted too long because
yeah. Hey, it would have only burned up to the down to the water line.
it wouldn't take long, and you wouldn't be able to see New York City from maybe half an hour.
It would have been a hell of a half hour though.
Oh man! And then they had to test the deputy chief. I took the test, and then I had deputy chief in Jersey City was a citywide. You had the whole city, and you had to run the city, the whole shebang. And then 94, there was a turmoil in the fire department with the current chief, and he retired. And they asked me to take the acting job because they didn't call for the civil service test yet. It was kind of a quick retirement. And so, I was the only deputy chief that lived in town. There was one other deputy chief that had a master's degree, but everybody else had no, high school diploma. And nobody wanted it. The other 6 deputy chiefs said, look, Dennis, when the test comes up, if you want the job, we won't sign up for the test. So you sign up for the test and you'll get promoted. But in the middle of that, I got a call from a friend of mine who asked me to apply for the superintendent's job at the National Fire Academy. And at the time, I believed that it was appointed by the president. Well, actually, it was appointed by the president of the United States. So it was like a political job. If you came in with the president, you left with the president.
Okay.
Not like a mayor, right?
Yeah.
And but he said, no, it's a career job. So I went down, I interviewed, and I thought that they gave me this whole thing. You got to go through, first interview, then a second interview, and then background. Well, I took one interview, and they called me up and offered me the job. So I knew it was an opportunity that I'd never get again.
Yeah.
So I was eligible. I had a year to go to be eligible for retirement, but you could buy I bought a year's military time back, and I went into federal service. And so that was a career position, which means that there's a couple of different systems in the federal government. There's a civil service, which is you have tenure to your title. You're a clerk typist, you're an analyst, you're a program manager, whatever it is. Then there's senior executive service, which
Hmm.
is you have title to, you have tenure to your rank. They can move you around wherever they want. But so this is a senior executive position. It's the highest pay in the federal service.
Yeah.
And so I went and I stayed there. And then I did that for 20 years. And then my boss suddenly passed away. And my boss was called the Deputy U.S. Fire Administrator. And I always had great bosses there. And I
Now
we were the same.
that's appointed by the president,
No,
right?
no, that's career as well.
Oh, okay.
The U.S. Fire Administrator is appointed by the president.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so everybody. So anyway, I never applied for that job because it was the same rank, it was the same pay, and I like being superintendent, But when my boss suddenly passed away, they asked me, we had a long conversation, and they said the smart thing to do is take that job, hire a superintendent that I could break in and train and help them do well. So I did that for 5 years, deputy fire administrator, and part of that job was a lot more political. Meetings in the White House and testifying before Congress, and I had.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
No, thank you.
Well, it's interesting. I'll tell you a funny story that the first time I went to the White House, it was a meeting, and driving to Washington D.C. is like driving to New York City. It can take you an hour, or it could take you 4 hours for the same distance. You know what I'm talking about, Nick.
Yep.
So I get down there early, and they have a uniformed Secret Service in the White House, and I go through the clearance, and they have my name and everything. I was ready to go, and they take me down to the Situation Room in the White House, and I get down there, and I'm in it's the room where you see the president sometimes in a crisis, where everybody's sitting around this big table, and there's wood paneled walls, and the clocks on the wall and everything, and it's called the Situation Room. And I get down there, and I'm by myself, and the chair at the head of the table has a seal where the head is. Where the head is on the chair, it says the seal of the President of the United States. So I'm from Jersey City. I sit in the chair, and I'm looking around, and I'm saying to myself, how the hell did I ever get here? I'm a Jersey City kid, And after about 3 meetings, 3 different times, I said to myself, how did they get here? These other knuckleheads in the meeting, It's just like, Jesus. But anyway, so the end of the story, it's not the end of the story, Nick, but the end of the story is that I've decided now that I've retired to give back. And that's what I'm doing. I'm doing a lot of lecturing on leadership, on dealing with people, on, managing different aspects of the fire service. Butchie Cobb will tell you the story. I had a fire. I gave 2 firefighters an order. They were killed doing it right in front of me. And that was a horrendous scar on my soul. It still is. But there were a lot of lessons there that I pass along to people, not the horror of the story, but how you had to make decisions. Very simple stuff like when something like that happens, you cannot manage the emergency and you cannot manage the fire at the same time. You have to delegate one of them. Talking about afterwards, you have to deal with the family. You have to do depositions. You got to go to court. You got, so not that anybody wants to go through that, but there are some techniques that I pass along that hopefully will help the next guy or gal that unfortunately has to face something like that.
Well, and really, I think that's something that we have classes now. Everybody seems to have a managing the Mayday type scenario, classes or lectures. But I think that's almost a class that you need, and what you're speaking about, that making that decision and watching the outcome right in front of you.
Yeah.
Because I've seen you speak, and I won't bring up the specific scenario, the incident that you're talking about. But I've heard you speak about it, and I respect that you do that. I think that's something that people getting into that position before they put on the white helmet, before they put on the white front piece, that's something they need to hear.
Yeah.
You know, be ready for your decision to have that impact, because you know what? None of us are perfect. None of us are ready for everything. Every fire is different, no matter how many you've gone to. There's going to be you know, Murphy comes to every fire.
Yep. And Murphy's an optimist.
Yeah.
Um,
And,
the
you
title
know,
of it is 4 minutes and 6 seconds. From the time I got there till the time they were dead in front of me, 4 minutes and 6 seconds.
mm,
So anyway, so getting back to the original, so I'm giving back, and that's what I've decided to do for whatever time I've got left on this earth. While I'm still able, I'm not dribbling and peeing in my pants. You know, I just I can still go on a plane and not get lost. But yeah,
so real quick, Chief Pat Workus, another
yeah,
alumni of Olathe's son,
Oh, okay.
is a battalion chief. He's actually he has a question. He says, "Good
Sure.
evening, Chief. Do you have any advice for a new EFO student? He just got into this year's class for the
Yeah,
EFO down in National Fire Academy."
yeah. Congratulations. You're one of a very, very few who've made that leap. And if you're anything like your dad, you're going to be a terrific chief officer. I knew your dad a long time, still know him, I should say, you know, but yeah, the advice is that you're going to have an opportunity to sit in a class with men and women from all over the country, and indeed, in some cases, all over the world. There's no ranks, there's no uniforms, and what you want to do is take advantage of not only what the instructors are going to be sharing with you, and they're going to be facilitating your learning. It's not a death by PowerPoint presentation. You'll be dealing with complex problems, and you'll be dealing with men and women with perspectives from all over the country. Take advantage of that and put that information in your little toolbox that you take back to. I guess he's still in Elizabeth with his dad. Yeah.
Yeah.
The second thing is to make sure you got everybody's name, address, email, and phone number, because as you go up through the ranks, and I'm sure you will, as you go up through the ranks, you're going to be facing things that you've never faced before. And you have a secret cadre of friends in your class, again, from all over the country. Just send out an email. Did you ever deal with this? And you'll get some great, great information. But take advantage of this opportunity to expand your knowledge, to experience the different perspectives in the fire service that you're going to experience, that you'll find. People will be faced with a problem, and you're very sure that your answer is the best one, and somebody's going to come out of left field with an issue or a solution that you never even thought of. And that's really the advantage of the Executive Fire Officer program. And then when you get out, I'm obligating you to make sure that other people, men and women, you encourage them to get into the program as well.
All right. He can't reply. I mean, he can comment, but so now, let's talk about the work you did, as the superintendent, and how you brought the enrollment up from what was it, like I forget whether it was 10 or 15,000 to over
It's about
100.
15,000 when it got there, and it was over 100,000, probably 115, 120,000. One of the challenges.
He did reply. Outstanding. Thank you very much.
Oh, he'll do well. One of the challenges that the National Fire Academy faced when I got there was that it was isolated. That there were among the group of students, and among the group of employees, and among a group of contract instructors, good people, hardworking people but they believed that they were the center of the universe for the fire and emergency services in the United States. That all wonderful things were invented in Emmitsburg and flowed out into the hinterlands. And fortunately, I was able to convince them that there was a better way. So we started to work in partnerships with all of the 50 state training systems, from Alaska to Florida to Hawaii to New York. And we made sure that the superintendent of the National Fire Academy, the superintendent of the State Fire Academy in Missouri or Montana or Illinois was an equal partner with the superintendent of the United States National Fire Academy. I stayed in touch with them. We started to allow them to donate courses to, it was a complicated process, but they gave us courses, we gave them courses, but we both took credit for the training. So and this is why it's an important thing, Nick, the National Fire Academy courses had a tremendous amount of weight, and people could take those courses and transfer them for college credit.
You were instrumental in that as well, right?
Correct. So now we start a whole process by which firefighters get a leg up on their college credits by taking National Fire Academy courses in Florida or Texas or Oregon. So by doing that, by exchanging courses and by having a system of education and training, and I'll talk about the education. This was the training piece, okay? The other piece was education. And we did the same thing with the colleges and the universities.
Mm-hmm.
There was 115 fire degree programs in the country, and we started working with them in partnerships. And then the last link was that we got the colleges to accept certain amount of NFA credit directly. There was no paperwork involved. It was just you showed the transcript and you got the credit. And to that extent, we began the profession of the fire service. We had people that were getting education, or you look at any profession, you look at engineering, nursing, law, medicine, architecture, they all have the same 4 elements: education, training, experience, and continuing education. Okay. You graduate from law school, you can't go to law. You can't practice law until you pass the bar, right? You go to medical school, you graduate, you have to go through an internship. So there's an education piece and there's a training piece. There's an experience piece, which has to occur locally, of course. And then the continuing education piece, going to seminars, taking courses, going to conferences that you refer to. So we followed the same model that every profession in the country follows: education, training, experience, and continuing education. And I talk about that quite a bit. So by doing this, now, when I went to the National Fire Academy, I knew everybody in the fire service that had an earned doctorate. Somebody went to, bricks and mortar school. There's a handful of us. Today, there are hundreds, of men and women who have earned, graduate degrees, masters and doctorates,
yeah.
And they're changing the fire service.
Absolutely.
They really are doing a good job. And they're facing new problems. But it was a very satisfying experience. And I attribute all of it, to the men and women of the Fire Academy and who believed in that vision, and to the state and local training systems that also believed in the system and saw the benefits.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. I couldn't have said it at all, but that's why you're on the show. But so I don't even know how do you even start making those kinds of those changes?
Well,
first of all, how big is your staff at the National Fire Academy?
It's about 50 people.
Okay.
but there was 1,100 instructors. They were contract instructors. So, I, all of us have experienced, the guy or the gal that comes in, bangs their fist on the table and says, my way or the highway. I never felt that was an effective way of managing an organization. So I talked to a lot of people inside the organization and outside the organization. And by that, I felt out where my impediments were going to be. I listened to their objections. I listened to their concerns. And to the extent possible that I could, I addressed them. It made the process better. It made it easier to implement. And in any management position that you have, this may be an Onieal term, but I view managing as like it's a metaphor, and I call it the bag of pistachio nuts. Okay, you open up a bag of pistachio nuts. There's a lot of those pistachio nuts you can open up pretty easily, but every once in a while, you're going to get a pistachio nut that you just can't open. You're biting on it, you're breaking it. The $2,000 worth of braces that your parents gave you. You're bending them, and there's always going to be people that are resistant to change. And if you are patient with them and sometimes ignore them and work on the 40, 50, 60%, 70% of the men and women who are willing to work with you, or at least not resist you, they're willing to give it a shot, you'll be successful. Not always, but most of the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I forget who it was equated it to. They call it the 50-30-20 rule.
Yeah.
Everybody comes in. There's going to be 50% of people that are going to be like, all right, you know what, he's the ball, or they're going to follow, for whatever reason, they're going to follow you right off the bat. They're going to give you that chance.
Yeah.
20 or 30% of the people are going to sit there and be like, all right. They're gonna watch what you do. They're not going to necessarily jump right in the water right away, but eventually they're going to catch on and they're going to follow you. But then there's that other 30 or 20% that are just stuck in their ways and not. They're going to be that pistachio that you just can't get open.
And what I would share with you, Nick, is that will always be your experience, but those people make you better. Because, if you want to learn to play tennis, you got to play with somebody that's really harder than, or a better player than you are. You told me you were playing football in high school. You don't want to beat the easy teams. You want to try to beat the really, really good teams,
Absolutely.
And they're the ones that you do well at. So if you look at it like that, it's a lot easier to deal with than chewing Tums every time you get an upset stomach.
Well, how successful are you if you're as a leader, if you're never challenged? Really, you think about it, you walk in the room and you go, hey, the sky is blue today. And everybody goes, yeah, chief. You walk in the next day and you go, the sky is red today. Yeah.
I have a response to that, and it might surprise you. If you come in with an idea and everybody says, yay, rah, they are your pallbearers. They are not following you. They are waiting for you to make a big mistake, and they are going to maliciously execute what you want to do. And by malicious execution, I'm going to, just going to be a fandango screw up.
Yeah.
So, in the fire department and in the federal service, you have men and women that you work with, and if we were sitting in a room and we all agreed, one of us would say this: we are missing something. We shouldn't all agree.
Yep.
So I'll pass that along as a management tip.
Your classmate, Chief Carter, told me a long time ago. He goes, if everybody is your friend, he goes, if you're a supervisor, if you're a leader, and everybody is agreeing with you and everybody's happy, they're lying. and you're about to either get shot or get fired.
I used to call them the pallbearers.
Yeah. He told me that as he was lighting one of his big stogies in front of a house a single
I
family
didn't
house that was.
really ever smoke those things.
I believe this was the second one of the day. We were
Oh,
we were on about hour 9 of burning a single family residence down. We
oh.
went to 13 and a half. It was a long night.
Yeah.
It was a long night. But yeah, so I was fortunate enough to be able to call him a close personal mentor and friend,
Good
as
guy.
you were. So now let's go on to your position as assistant or associate director of
It's
the
deputy
deputy
administrator.
director.
Yeah. So that's in the federal service. There was there are people that are appointed by the president of the United States,
Hmm.
and they come and go with the president. Right below them is a cadre of permanent employees, senior executives, who I want to say this the right way without sounding like a jerk. They run the government. You know, the politically appointed people are going out and speaking before groups and making sure that the president's wishes are executed. They'll come back to the senior executives and say, you know, we need this, or there's a policy change. And then those senior executives implement the changes or execute the issues or whatever it is.
Well, and that
So,
also brings the uniformity from administration to administration.
correct. Yeah. And but it's very similar to city government or state government. You know, when the mayor comes in and out, there's civil servants. When the governor comes in and out, there are political appointees and there
You,
are civil servants. So it's the same at the federal level. It's just, you know, you got 50 states and
yeah,
you know, your territory is a little bit bigger.
yeah.
Yeah. So in the morning, I would tell people I get into work at 6:30 in the morning, and I'd be getting calls from New York City. At 5 o'clock at night, I'd be getting calls from Honolulu, and they're just having lunch. So yeah,
Yeah,
you know that was how it went.
that's pretty wild. I mean, that's so now what were some of the did you go like you said you kind of got that in kind of a unexpected
Yeah,
manner. Did you go into that with, hey, you know what? Now being that next level over your former position, hey, now there's some things that I wanted to get to that I couldn't necessarily because there was obstacle or there was that extra tier above me. You
yeah.
know, did you have more?
I didn't have that issue because when I was superintendent, I was more or less partners with the deputy fire administrator. We
Okay.
were friends. We knew each other. It was not a uh, superior subordinate. On paper, it was a superior
Hmm.
subordinate relationship, but the day-to-day operation was, "Hey, I got this problem. Dennis, can you fix this?" You know, uh, Mike or whoever that was a deputy at the time, Charlie Dickinson or Glenn Gaines, you know, can you fix this for me? Can you go to the boss? So it was in that way. It was, and then I had a little bit more experience in federal service than they did. I just had more time.
Yeah.
So, you know, they come to me and say, how do you get this done? And I pick up the phone and some squirrely person down in headquarters someplace that I knew that could get anything done, the Radar O'Reilly.
I was just gonna say Radar
Yeah,
O'Reilly.
yeah. You knew where they were buried.
Radar and
And,
Sparky.
you know, pick up the phone and get it done. So, yeah, that's how it worked. It wasn't as hierarchical. So when I became the deputy, I was more interested in making sure that the new superintendent, Tanya Hoover, she was a state fire marshal in Connecticut,
Okay.
California. You know, she had a big job,
Hmm.
and but she was in charge. Training in California was one of the things that she was in charge of, and so just getting them attuned to the federal service, and we had a great working relationship, and so I spent my concentration there, and then we got hit with a number of disasters, and in this role, um, I was collateral duties. They would call you to manage these disasters,
Like
and
IMTT, like the IMT teams
No,
kind of
it was
thing, or?
part. Go ahead.
No. Like the FEMA IMT team kind of
No,
thing,
no,
or?
you would be in charge of a whole thing. I would. They sent me to the World Trade Center.
Okay.
I worked behind. This was my order. I'm giving you a blank check from the federal government. Do whatever you need to do up there. Yeah, from the U.S. Treasury. Okay. Um, there was a
All right.
political. Yeah, there were Hurricane Sandy was all the way up the East Coast, and they were having serious political problems in New York and New Jersey.
I
They sent me up
remember.
there to calm down the savage beasts in New Jersey and New York. Another time, they had me in charge of logistics for Hurricane Harvey down in headquarters. So you would take these senior positions in charge of big things. I don't want to over exaggerate it, and I don't want to sound like a jerk, but that's the responsibilities that they gave you. So these would be things like, where do you get 5 barges to fill with food to get down to Puerto Rico? Another call, Puerto Rico. This is Hurricane Irma, I think. I forget what it was, but there were 113 people on dialysis in Puerto Rico, and there were no dialysis units working. We had to charter a plane from Texas to fly to Puerto Rico to get them to Miami for dialysis. So, those are the kinds of issues that you had to deal with.
Small problems.
Well, yeah. Fortunately, you had good men and women to work with, and you go to them and say, "Look, how are we going to do this?" And
yeah, that's
getting oxygen to hospitals.
So now, how do you even, please? I mean, how do you create a team around yourself, like to solve those types? Because obviously, again, you said it before. It wasn't just you doing. You had to surround yourself by the right people. How do you, especially like I remember Hurricane Sandy, like you said, it was the entire East Coast. But then when we had that lack of better terms, that storm surge wave that hit the northern tip of the shore in Jersey, and the southern half of New York, New York City and Long Island. How do you? Yeah, I
Well, I think the most important thing is trust, Nick. And if you do there are certain interpersonal skills that you and I have because we grew up here in New Jersey and, kind of city kids, that you have the ability to read people. And there's a couple of techniques. But I've always found that the most important element in leadership is trust. And if people trust you, even if they think maybe this is the right thing or the wrong thing, if they trust you, they'll follow you. If they don't trust you, there is nothing you can do to bring them along. They will do whatever you tell them to do and no more. And as I said, I'm giving back. So one of the things that I do is I talk about the very basic things that leaders need to do to build trust in their people. And it's a 2-hour discussion, but the trust is a critical element. And after a while, if they trust you, you can pretty much get almost anything done.
Again, Chief Cobb has another one. He says you had a tremendous impact on the 9/11 Ground Zero.
Well, there was another issue there of trust, and it was very difficult at the time. We didn't even know what needed to be done. The New York City government, the first day or 2 or 3, did not want the federal government to come in. And the only reason that I was sent up there was because the fire commissioner at the time knew me, Tommy Von Essen. And when FEMA said, do you want us to come up? And they said, no, we can handle it. And Von Essen said, well, doesn't Denis Onieal work for you? And they said, yeah. And they said, well, you can send Denis up. But it's so it was, and then it just went from there. It was not you could get things done, and I brought a team of folks up from the fire administration, and we had it grew, and we got things done. But whatever they needed.
But again, like you said, I'm gonna give you this, the world resources. No, I don't want it. Wait, you got that? He knew he had somebody he could trust.
Yeah.
Like you were just saying, you got to
And you
surround
better deliver.
yourself with people that you trust. Yeah,
You better deliver.
absolutely.
So I want to go to a discussion of Bobby and Dennis on a pretty interesting day that Butchie went around and changed the fire service in America. You may or may not know this, Nick, but at the time, the insurance services office would come into a fire department and they would evaluate the fire department's response to potential conflagrations. And that's how they would base their fire insurance. And there were these rules that they had. And my favorite was they had something called the Cooper hose jacket. And this was you're looking at me like
that leather sleeve.
Yeah, it clamped around a hose, and if it was leaking.
That was right next to that towel that had the bottle in it under the driver's seat.
That nobody ever used, right?
Yeah.
But you always had to have it on the rig because if ISO was looking for it, they had to have it. And every 5 years or every 10 years, you had to drag it out and paint it. So, first you had to find it. And the terrible, terrible fire in Charleston, South Carolina, the Super Sofa fire happened in around 2009 or 10. And by that time, Bobby Butchie was over in ISO. He had left Jersey City and he worked for ISO. And I picked up the newspapers and I picked up the reports and I picked up the pictures of the event. And everything associated with that fire department had ISO Class 1 plastered all over it, all the way across the back of the chief's cars, all the way in the fire trucks, on their patches, on their firehouse doors. Everything said ISO Class 1. At the time, I was the acting U.S. fire administrator. There was a new administration. President Obama had just come in, and he had not appointed a U.S. fire administrator. So when that occurs in the federal service, that senior executive moves up into the top position until the new political appointee comes on board. So I called Butchie up, and I said, Butchie, we can't keep doing this. Can you and your bosses come down and see me? And they came down, and we had a very good discussion about ISO rating schedules, ISO rules, and this is what they're using to evaluate their fire department, when in fact, that was never the intent of the rating schedule. The rating schedule was to evaluate risk, not fire departments.
Mm-hmm.
So we were there for a couple of hours, and we agreed that ISO was now going to just adopt by resolution, or however they do it, to the NFPA standards. So now fire departments don't have to follow ISO standards for training and NFPA standards or any of that. And Bobby did it. And of course, it was a tough sell, but Bobby's a good salesman, and he's very trustworthy. He's one of those trustworthy leaders. And he went around the country. He got it done. And now fire departments don't have to follow two sets of rules. It's only one. We're seeing a number of fire departments complying with the ISO standards, reducing their risks in the community by following these NFPA standards as opposed to ISO. And that man changed this country. He really did.
Absolutely.
Another Jersey City American.
Another Jersey NJ fire guy.
NJ fire guy. Got it.
He didn't even tell me that story.
Well, I think the important part of this story is, well, let me go back. There's a play in New York called Hamilton. I don't know if you've ever seen it.
I haven't. I've
But
heard a
there's a
lot about
scene,
it though.
yeah, there's a scene in the play where Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr and James Madison and Thomas Jefferson are in a conversation. And at the time, New York City is the capital of the United States. Jefferson and Washington and Madison are all from Virginia, and they have to travel to New York whenever they have to do government business. Hamilton lives in New York. Hamilton wants a Federal Reserve System, a federal banking system. He was the treasurer. And and Jefferson and Monroe were not too sure about this whole thing. So they get together over dinner, the four of them. And after dinner, Washington, D.C. is now the capital of the United States next to Virginia. And the federal government has a Federal Reserve. And there's a great song, and it's called In the Room Where It Happens. And you had to be, and that's what they talk about. You have to be in the room where it happens to make these things happen. And that day, Butchie and his friends, his colleagues from the ISO, were in the room where it happened. No one knew about it. It was nothing public. It was just in my office in little old Emmitsburg, Maryland. And that is so. If you want to make sure you know what's going on, you got to be in the room where it happens.
Yeah, absolutely. So now talking about how, excuse me, the ISO change happened. You know, are you staying up to date with the impending or the proposal for the OSHA standard, the emergency response standard? You know, what can you offer to those that maybe are listening that aren't too
happy about it?
Well, not necessarily too happy about it, but you know, aren't really too educated in how the OSHA standards happen or the NFPA standards happen. You know, I, I hear these arguments in volunteer and career circles, in social media, and you know, there's people out there that are you know, making stickers that say abolish the NFPA. Well, that to me tells me it's somebody who doesn't understand the NFPA or how the standards are written.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, we can sit here and scream about the manufacturers that run the NFPA. Well, that's because the firemen are all saying abolish the NFPA and aren't sitting at the table where it happens.
Right. Well, I'll just give you some information, Nick, for you and your listeners. Okay. And I'll start with the NFPA because I'm on the board of directors for the NFPA. First of all, the manufacturers don't run the NFPA. The manufacturers have representatives on the committees, but the committees, by rules, have to be balanced. Mm-hmm. If there's a firefighter out there that wants to be on a committee, all he or she needs to do is notify them, and they can go online and do it to be considered for a committee. And I've seen these applications, and I've seen the balance of the committees. Yes, there are manufacturers on it. Yes, there are firefighters on it. Yes, there are volunteers on it. Yes, there are career firefighters on it. And they come up with not always the best rule, but the most progressive rule. Okay, I would say, I would use the legal term, it's called the best evidence. All right, it's not perfect evidence, it's the best evidence we have. But every human being on the face of the earth has the opportunity to go on the line to the NFPA webpage, see what's being considered as a standard, and have the opportunity to comment, to provide additional information, pro or con, and that has to be addressed before the regulation or the standard can be implemented.
Which I understand is the same with the impending OSHA.
Exactly. You know, the old saying, if all it takes for evil to triumph is for good people to do nothing. If you don't like the standard, write a letter. Tell them why you don't like it. You know, give them the reasons behind the your reasoning. And they must address it.
Yeah.
CC your congressman, CC your senator. It doesn't cost that much money. But if you think for a heartbeat that sitting around the firehouse complaining about it, whining about it, not going to do anything.
Absolutely.
If you think that the IAFF is going to be able to be successful, they're going to be successful if you support them, by letters. But they're not going to be successful if you sit back and expect them to do it. The same with the volunteer fire VCOS, volunteer and combination officer section, and then they have 2 volunteer sections there, and the National Volunteer Fire Council is the other one I was thinking of.
Yeah,
they have people in Washington, they have opportunity, but they can't do it alone. You know, it's like trying to win a baseball game with 2 players against 9. You've got to step up to the plate. You've got to write a letter, make a phone call, mostly write a letter, because in the federal service, phone calls doesn't mean anything. It's vapor. They don't mean it. You write a letter, send it to them, return receipt requested. You know, they're looking at it, they'll read it, and they're going to respond to it. But again, if you sit back, you know, kid around, 2 things. I said that I was fortunate in Jersey City in that every firehouse that I went to, every firefighter in the fire station at that time knew how to be the chief. Okay. They all knew how to do the job. And
I see you worked in that firehouse too.
And I tell people that I work for the largest law firm in the state of New Jersey, which is the Jersey City Fire Department. You know, the judge can't do that to you. Well, I got a hot flash for you. So don't sit back on your hands. Don't wait for the IAFF or the National Volunteer Fire Council or the Volunteer and Chief Officers Combination Section of the International Association of Fire Chiefs to fight the fight for you. If you don't like a standard at the OSHA, write a letter. Call you, send a copy to your congressman and your senator.
100%.
If you don't like an NFPA standard, get online, write a comment, whatever it is, tell them why, and they will address it.
Yeah, 100%.
If you want to really get involved, volunteer to, and they have, I can go into a whole lot of detail, but if there's a meeting, they'll pay some of it. If most of the meetings today are online, so it's like this.
Yeah.
That the discussion. So.
All right, Chief. Well, we're at 1 hour and 10. I won't keep.
What's our time limit on this? I forgot to ask you, Nick.
We can go all night if you want.
How about no?
I was actually just gonna say we're at about 1 hour and 10.
Yeah.
Do you have anything coming up that you want to talk about, or anything anybody you want to?
Yeah, I just finished up. I was speaking down at the Eastern Division of the IFC. So it's the chiefs from New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Maryland.
Yeah, I missed you on the really Saturday.
Really pleased to see some young men and women down there getting involved. That kind of inspires me. I would also add that if you want a terrific experience, sign up, put in an application to the National Fire Academy, take a course. I guarantee you, if you go one time, you'll go back. They pay your way to and from. You get a dorm, private room, private bath, remote control, colored TV, air conditioning. The only thing you pay for is your meals. The only time the government buys your meals is if you're in prison or in the army. The rest, yeah, that's it. And you're in a beautiful part of the country. You're about 10 miles south of the battlefield at Gettysburg. And again, you'll meet men and women from all over the country. And you will experience, when you go there, I tell people that many times, you get the worst chief, the worst training, the worst equipment, the worst trucks, everything's bad until you go there. And then you find out you're doing okay in America, that there are men and women in fire departments in this country that are in a lot worse shape
Yeah.
than yours is.
At the
And
Eastern Division Conference,
Yeah.
Chief Gablix was talking about how, I guess, what was it, the International Fire Conference was the week prior?
World Fire Conference.
And I forget what country he said it was talking about they can't attack structure fires with water because fighting one fire with water will deplete the entire nation's drinking water supply.
Yeah.
And that's,
I think it was South America.
Like, you think about that, that's wow. Like,
yeah.
Wow.
And they're principally volunteers that are taking donations from the United States in terms of vehicles and equipment, taking our casting. And that's as good as it gets there. Some places. You look at our brothers and sisters in Ukraine and the fighting the fires that they're fighting.
Yeah. Similar to the, almost as bad as the British Blitz in England during the war.
I would argue worse.
Yeah.
The Blitz only lasted not a short amount of time, but not 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And they weren't, those V-2 rockets and the bombers weren't the caliber of weapons that they're dealing with today.
This is very true.
Well, I want to thank you, Nick, for having me on.
Oh, we're not done yet. I have the Jersey questions for you.
Oh, cool.
I have the Jersey.
You cannot I've been all over the country, and you cannot get a decent bagel or a decent slice of pizza anywhere except New Jersey. I can answer that question without doubt.
All right, number one. Is it pork roll or Taylor ham?
Oh, I think it's pork roll. I'm not an egg guy, so I'm not the expert on that stuff. But yeah,
I'm not an egg guy either. I replace it with bacon and go pork roll, bacon and cheese.
Oh, that's got to be good for you.
Oh yeah, my doctor loves it.
I know what artery's going to get that one.
All right, number two, best pizza.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but the New York Times did a survey of the best pizza in New York, and it was a place in Jersey City. True story. You can look it up.
I love it.
The best pizza was in Jersey City. It's right across the street from City Hall. I don't know the name, but it's famous.
All right. Number three, do you go to the beach or you go down the shore?
Go down the shore, no question. Exit 63, Garden State Parkway.
All right. What beach?
Well, Long Beach Island is where we go. Usually Ship Bottom. Yeah.
Okay.
But we had a summer home in the poor side of town in Manahawkin.
All right.
Called Beach Haven West. And so we went down there for 25 years.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Does Central Jersey really exist?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't.
There wasn't even a hesitation.
Southern Jersey starts around Middletown, but there's no middle. Even Middletown isn't Middle Jersey. It's Southern Jersey. Once you go over the bridge in Woodbridge, that's Southern New Jersey. You know the bridge I'm talking about, right, Nick?
I know exactly what bridge you're talking about, the Driscoll.
Okay. All right, that's it. That's Southern New Jersey.
All right, moving right on to the next question. Proudest achievement on the job?
Getting the firefighters and officers that I worked with promoted, and to see their families being so proud of them, and going to City Hall and seeing them get promoted was just great. And then the second proudest moment was when a firefighter's family would show up at the firehouse when I was a battalion or a deputy. And, you talk to the family and tell them how brave their firefighter is and how you rely on them so much. And even if it was maybe not the best firefighter, the next day they came back and they were almost a different person because, they felt. And then I would take the kids get away with it because nobody caught me. But I would take the kids for a ride in the Chief's car, and I would put it in a low gear first to say it was not stick, it was automatic, but you put it in a low gear so that the engine revs loud. And then we put on the siren and I drive them around the block. They thought they were doing 90 miles an hour, But I had this one firefighter's son, and he said, "Now, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm the chief." I was a deputy then. So I said, "I'm the deputy chief, and I'm in charge of the whole city." And he looks at me and goes, "You are not." He's about 9 years old. Well, that young man is a New York City firefighter today. Yeah.
You are not.
Yeah.
Liar.
Yep.
That's great. What advice do you have for the fire service?
Yeah. We're going to be dealing with tremendous changes. And if you don't like, what I like to share with people is that, alligators and dinosaurs lived at the same time in our history of the world. And dinosaurs died off not because they were old, but because the environment changed and they didn't. The alligators have been adapting to and change for millennium, for 300,000 years. So, they have television shows about people that kill alligators. It's still on TV. So what I would share with people is, if you don't like change, you're going to hate extinction. The fire service is continually changing. The services we deliver continually change. We're now, if you look at the data nationally, of course, in every city is different. Every town is different. But nationally, fewer than 5% of the fire department's calls are fires today. And so we're getting into emergency medical services, the rescue services. And what I like to share with people is, when a person threatens a person, the police department usually handles that. And when a thing threatens a person, it could be a windblown sign, a hurricane, a heart attack, whatever, the fire department handles it. And we've got to look at how we continue to serve the public, because they love us. The public loves us. We have very high trust. It gets back to that trust issue, and we don't ever want to do anything to damage that trust.
100%. 100%. All right. Well, I wish I asked this question before, because that would have been a great note to go out on. But
well, I have another one to get you out on.
Oh, go ahead.
So if you fly over Jersey City in a helicopter and you look down on the Statue of Liberty in Ellis Island, you'll see that they're in Jersey City. Don't believe those lying New Yorkers, okay? They lie all the time.
I forget who said it. It was one of the guys that when my dad was at the MOT in Bayonne, it was a Jersey City guy. AJ Krause.
Okay, yeah.
Late AJ Krause. He said when he was in school as a child in Jersey City, he said the nun, when they were being especially bad in class, the nun would point out the window, "You see that? You children are so horrible, the Statue of Liberty turned her back on you."
Uh-huh. We're very fortunate to have grown up in that environment. If you grow up New York, New Jersey, in that general area, you can go anywhere in the world. You know how to deal with people. You can read people. Yep. And it's just a great experience. Great experience, Nick.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. All right. Last question, and then I'll let you go.
Okay.
Who are or were some of your, biggest mentors and mentors on the job or in life even?
Yeah. One guy that probably influenced, well, of course, my dad. Okay. There's tremendous influence in my life. Never went above the rank of firefighter, never interested in promotion, but just a terrific firefighter and a even more terrific dad. Another colleague of mine, Jim Klein, who was a captain in New York City, who was originally my professor in Jersey City State and New Jersey City University. And he was a firefighter. He had a master's degree and he was teaching. And then he was promoted to lieutenant. And then we went into business together. And we were in business for 20 years or so, teaching men and women how to be successful in civil service exams. And then a number of national leaders. I knew them all: Vinnie Dunn, John Salkin, John Norman, the Alan Brunacini, chiefs all over the country. I was just with some of them. Alan, of course, just recently passed away a couple of years ago, but all good people. And I still listen to advice, to what things are going on. And a guy named Russ Sanders, who was a chief down in Louisville, Kentucky, was a good friend, great mentor. Jim Pauly, the president of the NFPA. Craig, Mike Weeder down at IFSTA, all good friends, great leaders, and good friends.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate everything tonight. I appreciate your time.
Okay.
Absolutely humbled.
Yeah. But lucky Truckee out of Jersey City.
The last comment I'm going to read for you is Chief Cobb again.
Yeah.
Says, every promotion I achieved had Chief Onieal's mark on it.
Well, we studied together. Yeah, he did. So there's got to be somebody on here that doesn't like me that'll send something. In
no,
there.
You know what? See, this isn't the firehouse where they have to come to work if they don't, whether they like you or not. They don't tune in.
Okay.
A lot of people, and it's not you, it's me. Trust me.
Nick, let's do this again. Sometime.
I would love to. I would love to. Hang out. I'm going to put you in the back room real quick. We'll say our goodbyes off the air. I'm going to say goodnight and hold on one second. All right. That wraps up run number 17. Another amazing episode with Chief Dr. Denis Onieal. Catch us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel. Until then, stay safe.